The wars of our past have left an ongoing impact on the lives of soldiers and civilians. It's a common possibility for a soldier to come back from a war with a tragic mental state. Many would develop stress disorders and requiring isolation to escape from the cruel world that shaped them to be this way. Not only are the soldiers affected, but their families as well, as they too are in constant fear of never seeing their children again when they are sent to fight. In the novel The Wars, Thomas Finley endures the battles within his mental state and soul, and claims that these battles are more destructive than physical combat. He also explores post-depression and the mental scars that soldiers leave the battlefield with, which he develops through suicide. He continues with the impacts that families endure through the war. Thomas Finley shows mental pain is far more difficult to handle than physical pain during the war, through exploration of soldiers' experiences, suicide, and the rough times of soldiers' families. Finley illustrates the mental scarring left behind on soldiers. Robert Ross undergoes many disturbing experiences from which he starts displaying symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. Finley states that Robert had a great deal of violence inside, and sometimes it emerged this was with a gesture, and other times it showed in his expression when you found him sitting alone on the terrace or staring out the window. This is on page 153. Robert was an introverted and shy person, as he values privacy very much. However, the war had a great impact on Robert, which makes his mental state increasingly violent and fragile. Robert sees the violence as a way to release his true emotions. He portrays self-destructive behavior and severe emotional distress, which are symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. Robert is also continuously flustered by his surroundings. He is angry at the fact that innocent animals have to deal with disasters caused by the ignorant behaviors of humans. Robert also experiences a violent assault when his assailants, quote, pulled his lips until his jaw was going to snap, and the scream made a knot in his throat and began to choke him. Quote, this is on page 168. The horrific, fear-inducing battles with Robert fights is also propelled in his condition, but the rape stands as a symbol for all the traumatic experiences that have happened to Robert. Robert is often faced with negative situations, such as the sound of distant rifle fire, as he is frequently subdued to violent situations. We also see that Robert experiences a real physical pain when he is burned alive. However, the mental pain was burning him throughout the story. Finley shows mental pain being just as real as physical pain, exploring the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder on soldiers. Some soldiers say they would endure the physical pain of death instead of continuing to feel the mental pain, as it feels too much too. After witnessing the damage and torture of animals, quote, Rodwell wandered into no man's land and put a bullet through his ears, quote, on page 135. Animals are a symbol of innocence and life, and the character Rodwell keeps many animals and takes very good care of them. When Rodwell was in battle, his fellow soldiers prove him wrong by injuring and torturing innocent animals, which he cannot bear mentally, and decides that shooting himself and dealing with that quick, instant physical pain would be much easier. This act put mental health on the stand. We finally see the characters collapsing under the mental burdens and the pain. This weight is felt by readers as well. Another example of this would be Captain Eugene Taffler. The effects of war took a toll on him as well. He took his own life as he was kneeling on the floor in a pool of unraveled bandage, with his forehead touching the stones. He must have been rubbing his wounds to make them bleed. This is on page 156. Rodwell felt the pain of death, however it was a quick death. On the other side, however, Taffler's death is much more gruesome and much more painful. Taffler was a healthy, powerful man who was able to endure physical pain, which is specifically highlighted when he was first throwing stones at bottles, and he didn't miss once. Despite this, when he was placed in a situation where he was under great mental pain and agonizing physical pain, he chose to escape the mental pain by a very physical, painful suicide. The last example was found after Robert was burned alive. The nurse offered Robert the option of death, however he declined, though he was under excessive amounts of pain. When compared with the suicide of Rodwell and Taffler, it is clear that both soldiers felt more pain when it was a mental battle than a physical one. Many soldiers find the mental suffering of war is too much to handle, and as a result take their own lives, which adds to the portrayal of mental pain. Soldiers fight their fights every day on the battlefield, but there's also a battle going on at home. Families have to bear the weight of the after effects of the war. Miss Ross, for example, is taken by surprise when she hears about Robert's absence. All she wanted was to sit in the corner of her room and watch the door for Robert's return. This is quoted on page 69. While Robert goes through the physical and mental pains of war, Miss Ross is left with nothing but mental pain. She is concerned for Robert and cannot stand to believe the possibility that Robert might have died. For this reason, she stares at the door unseeingly for hours, fooling herself into believing that Robert will return one day. This dwindling mental stability is highlighted again when it is revealed that Miss Ross was less and less a companion to her husband and her children. This is quoted on page 47. Many people with depression tend to prefer isolation. However, their loneliness creates a feedback loop of never-ending mental pain. This is as ironic as the source behind Miss Ross's worries and the death of her loved ones. This backward way of thinking showcases the workings of a mental deterioration. When all her worries and concerns become her reality, she says, quote, "I'm blind. I've gone blind," on page 188. This blindness stands as a symbol for the darkness overtaking her. It is made clear that she loved her children very much, and with their deaths, she felt that her reason to live had slipped from her hands. Though she experienced no physical pain, the effects of stress and depression lead to physical consequences. Finley does this to show that mental pain is real. Finley uses these examples of Miss Ross to stand as a symbol for the mental effect that was had on the civilians. This piece relays a very unique perspective of the consequences of war. Finley examines the mental pain inflicted through its birth of post-traumatic stress disorder, its causation of suicide, and effects on family. By exploring PTSD, Finley is able to establish mental pain as a very real even. Though in depth looking into suicide, Finley shows that mental pain is just as harmful as physical pain. As well, through the example of Miss Ross, the author shows that the mental pain is far more greater than physical pain, since you don't really need to find a physical war to experience it. For example, Miss Ross. With bullets flying, bombs exploding, and soldiers dying, it is evident that physical pain was endured. However, Finley makes it his mission to prove that many people cannot handle the war due to mental pain.